Good afternoon. Welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for another fan debate. And this afternoon, we're talking all things Fulham, and in particular, the best strikers they've ever had. I'm your host, George Dagless, and joining me this afternoon is Fulham fan Matt Baldwin. He's going to let us know who he thinks are the best five strikers the Cottagers have ever had in the years gone by. First of all, though, Matt, how are you getting on?
I'm pretty good. You can't be not anything but happy with given the start that Fulham have made this season. So so any chance to talk about them, past or present, it's always a good thing because you're in a happy mood.
Yeah, undoubtedly, Fulham having a great season so far. Fulham fans, do get in touch wherever you're watching from. Let us know who your picks would be for the five best strikers your club's ever had. But let's get straight into it then. Matt, let's talk number five first of all. Who's your first pick, Matt, and why?
So number five, I think I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it current, and I'm going to go for Aleksandar Mitrovic. He's a name that anyone in the anyone who's a fan of any team in the Championship should know and really should fear at this stage, given the start of the season he's made. But you just think, going back to what he's done for us in the Championship, when he first joined us in January 2018. He was the missing piece of the puzzle because we were really struggling when it came to finding a centre forward. At that time, we had to play Stefan Johansson as a false nine. Rui Fonte wasn't really getting the job done. Lucas Piazon. We just had all these options. Even going back the previous year, there was a decent settled core to the squad with the likes of. With all the players that we had, but it was Chris Martin up top, and he did okay. But you could tell we weren't going to get promoted with him in the side. And then in comes Aleksandar Mitrovic through sheer luck, as it were, because reports were that he was on his way to Anderlecht. I think there was Middlesbrough were thrown into the mix as well. And just so happened on deadline day that Slavisa Kanovic just called him up and said, "Right, I need a centre forward. Obviously they're both Serbian, so they've got connections there. I need a centre forward. You need somewhere to go. Why don't we make this work?" And it was the start of a fantastic relationship. Obviously, we got him in on loan, scored a number of goals to get us, to keep us pushing for automatic promotion. Obviously, we fell short at the end, but played a big role in the playoffs. And then, the Premier League season, the first time round, well, both times around, you sort of miss out. But again, just his impact when it comes to this division, I think that's really the most important thing to stress. At this stage, because he has given us a platform to build off. In effect, the 2.5 seasons he's this being the third season, the middle one, and then the first initial 6 months, he's given us such a platform to build our promotion chasing sides around. So I don't think without him, I don't think there's any striker or centre forward in the Championship that I would rather have in my team than that guy there.
I mean, you look at the goals he scored, particularly this season, 20 already. It's quite some guy, given that we're only in November. You look at the Ivan Toney record that was set last year. Do you think that's in danger this season?
I think it has to be. I honestly don't think, barring some catastrophic injury or suspension, because he is a hothead, and so there is always the capability and the possibility that he'll get injured at some point or get suspended at some point. But assuming everything like that, it has to be. I can't see any way that it won't go away. I think that record is probably very much under threat, and you could probably even see if he broke it by about March time the way he's been going.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be a surprise. And just quickly before we move on from Mitrovic, Matt, why do you think, when the Fulham have stepped into the Premier League, obviously there's that level increase in ability of the teams you're facing, but why do you think it's perhaps not worked for him as much as, many would have expected it to for him?
Well, the first time around, I think it was just the utter chaos that was surrounding the club. We had the £100 million spent and trying to sort out a system. And Slavisa Kanovic's teams, as Sheffield United fans will know, they take a bit of a while to get going. And just sadly, he wasn't afforded that sort of time and patience. You could argue whether or not it was right or wrong, but he wasn't afforded that patience when we were in the Premier League. So he went, then Claudio Ranieri came in, then Scott Park. Just the chaos around that, I don't think it was, it was never the best setup for him. I think there is a player there. I mean, he scored 11 goals, I think it was. So there is a player there. And then the second time around, it was just, again, the system that Scott Parker played in the Premier League, just, the way Scott Parker wanted to play, he obviously thought it didn't suit Mitrovic, but clearly it did, because when he came in, he was able to make an impact, but it was just stubbornness on the part of Scott Parker. So I think, should we, touch wood, should we get promoted this season, and we can build a team around him, I think there is a chance that he could make it as a Premier League player, especially with us.
Okay, we will see. Fulham certainly looking good to get themselves back into the Premier League at the end of this season. Mitrovic, absolutely the man spearheading that at the moment. So Mitrovic in at number 5. Let's move on to number 4. Who have you got in 4th, Matt, and why?
So for this one, this is someone I've had to sort of delve into the elders. I do a podcast called Fulham Focus, and I've had to delve into the elders of the squad. For that one, I've gone for Graham. I've gone for Graham Leggat. Now, this is someone who's had to literally, as I've said, just had to ask about them, because whilst he's a name that I think it's sort of a status symbol, as it were, that I knew who he was. It's one of those, like Man United fans, and regardless of how old you are, you should know the names of George Best, Bobby Charlton, Duncan Edwards, and all that lot from that era. And if you're a Fulham fan, you should at least know the likes of Les Strong, Johnny Haynes, Graham Leggat being another one, Malcolm McDonald. You should know these names, and Graham Leggat is one of them. And I just think when you look at his accomplishments, 134 goals. This was back in the days when it was 2-3-5. He mixed between being a winger and a striker in those days. 134 goals, 8 of those were hat tricks. I think that's whatever club and whatever division you are playing in, I think if you can get 8 hat tricks for one club, that's a pretty substantial achievement, and also has the notable distinction. Everyone, I'm sure everyone has seen the graphic that gets passed along. It comes around Boxing Day 1963, and all those crazy scores that went on in the first division that day. We beat Ipswich Town 10-1, and he had the fastest hat trick in first division history. He scored it that day. It was broken in 2015. I can't remember who broke it, but again, it's just when you look at not necessarily the number of goals, but the way he was able to play and the accomplishments that he put up. I think that's probably why he goes in at number 4.
Okay, yeah, I mean, a little bit before our time, unfortunately.
Yeah, but, very much so.
The little bit of research I did as well before the show, and obviously you sent your list over, an unbelievable goal scoring record that he had, didn't he?
Yeah, incredible. There are, especially, I think some of it has to sort of be put into the context of what we have, because Fulham, in the past 20 years, sort of whilst I've been supporting, there haven't been many players that have stuck around. Even the great forwards for us. Berbatov was only there, 1.5 seasons. Mitrovic has only been here for 3 years, and there's always the risk that he could go. McBride was only about 5 seasons. Helgeson, even names we're going to mention, so I won't ruin them. We're quite a transient club because of our size, so we don't really get that many players that can score 100 goals because they will be poached by other clubs. But I think it is just it just shows again what sort of the loyalty that he had, and also the talent that he had. If you can get over, I think, and again, regardless of whatever club, if you can get 100 goals for the club, that just shows what a great impact you've had. So to put him on that list, I think was a no-brainer.
Yeah, well worthy. Graham Leggat then coming in at number 4. Who's number 3, Matt, and why?
I think in a similar vein to Graham Leggat, this is another one that's before my time. I had to do some research, but I think whenever you are putting together a list of the best in whatever category, I think whoever is the top has to be in there. Like I remember there was a discussion a couple of years ago. Someone was trying to put together an all-time Premier League 11. And they didn't put Alan Shearer in it. And I just remember the discussion going around, how can you put together a best Premier League 11 and not have the guy who scored the most goals? So on that logic, I think I have to put Gordon Davies in there. He is our club's top goal scorer. He's got 178 goals in 450 games. And I think part of it is the story that surrounds him, because he I'm not making a direct comparison, but he did something of a Jamie Vardy. He was in the lower leagues back in the day. He was at Merthyr when we signed him back in the late 70s, and as he's quoted himself, he stepped up 5 leagues when he joined us. So to make a huge jump like that, it's a difference when you're going from Championship to Premier League. Even we've seen even Ivan Toney is only really 2 years away from League One to Premier League, and he's made that jump. But to make a jump like that for 5 divisions and to come in and be an instant success, I think is again just a measure of the talent that he had. And when you go through again, we were going up and down through divisions again, and to keep it consistent in that level, to get as many goals as he did, and again, also the accomplishment of being top goal scorer. I think that's again that has to put him in contention. That's why I've got him for number 3.
Yeah, I mean, he's one of those players that, I mean, I'm not a Fulham fan myself, and obviously I never saw him play like yourself again, but he's one of those players that you have actually heard of, isn't he? Even if you don't support the club, because of that goal scoring record, because he has that accolade of being Fulham's, record goal scorer, he suddenly gets that recognition in the wider game, doesn't he?
Exactly, yeah, and he's played for some of the bigger clubs, Chelsea, Manchester City had his time there. But again, the fact that his name does ring around, the fact that you knew who he was, despite not being a Fulham fan, and again, there will be a couple of other teams that maybe he's managed to score important goals against them. Again, the older fans will probably know him. So I think that's again just another mark of his accomplishment, that his name does resonate around the game. So yeah, I think that's a positive mark on him.
Okay, certainly is. That's Gordon Davies then coming in number 3. We're into the top 2 now, Matt. 2 players. I won't give too much away, but 2 players we have seen in the flesh since we've been born, luckily enough. So, who's your second? Who's your second place pick?
Yeah, exactly. Gone for a more modern player for this, and I've gone for Bobby Zamora, someone who had a bit of a very rough start when he first joined Fulham, because he was essentially playing not second fiddle to Andy Johnson, but his job wasn't to score. It was basically to get the ball to Andy Johnson, to get him the goal. So he was off. So he went through a very bad run of games, and it got to a stage where the fans were pretty much on top of him. And there's the infamous / famous image of him cupping his ears to the Fulham fans during an FA Cup replay against Swansea back in 2009, just because he managed to get the monkey off his back and score. And it was, he had a bit of an edge to him. But it was really his second season that really is what gets him ingratiated in Fulham folklore as well, the Europa League run. And again, partly because of the fact that he didn't have Andy Johnson with him. He was, we had played 4-4-2, but we resorted to a 4-4-1-1 with Zoltan Gera playing just behind him. So he became the main man. And, you look at what he managed to do in Europe that season, and it was just incredible. The night against Juventus, he tore Fabio Cannavaro, world class central defender. I think he may have won the Ballon d'Or, at least came very close. He's won accolades, he's won World Cups. Tore him a new one that night. Even managed to get him sent off. And just his presence and the impact that he made in Europe. Europe isn't really a competition that Fulham are used to being in. But the fact that he was able to make such an impact and be such a crucial player on as big a stage as that, something that no Fulham player, because we've been in Europe before and since in the Intertoto in 2001 and the lesser known Europa League campaign of 2011. But for him to have the impact that he did in that season alone just goes to show what a measure of he was, because it's something that I don't think any Fulham player will probably achieve again. And when you look at it, maybe pie in the sky dream, but should we get into Europe in the next 2 or 3 years, it would be a hard task for even someone like Aleksandar Mitrovic and how well he's played, and he's got European experience. But to have such a dominant impact on a European campaign the way that Zamora did, I don't think will ever be touched. And I think for the fact that he did it in Europe against great competition, that's why he goes in at number 2. He didn't score as many goals as Leggat and Davies and all the other players, but the impact that he had was just incredible.
Do you think he doesn't get as much credit as perhaps deserves for that particular campaign? Obviously, it's so influential in that Europa League run, and also, he was in the England conversation around that time as well, on the back of those performances.
He was. I think some of it may do because of other things that happened around the club. The fact that he left us for QPR, 8 rivals is not great. And I think he sort of gets pushed aside because of the moment of the European campaign. Everyone will remember the night against Hamburg when it was Simon Davies and Zoltan Gera that got the goals. Everyone will remember the night against Juventus, but the thing everyone remembers most is Clint Dempsey's chip. So I think whenever you say Europa League campaign, his name doesn't really get mentioned. It's not the first thing that comes to mind, when arguably it should be, because you go back to the night against Basel when we won 3-2. He got 2 of the goals that night, and without that, we don't get out of the group stages into the knockout stages. So I think that may be it. But as you said, he was in the England setup, and I think because he got injured towards the end of that 2010 season, and if he'd have been fully fit in the final, it's me and a lot of other people on the Fulham Focus podcast think we would have won that night, because he was just ineffective and he had to be brought off early. And I think if he'd have been fit, he probably would have gone with the England squad in that World Cup in South Africa. He managed to get his England call up, that international break afterwards. But I think if he'd have gone to the England squad with the England squad to the World Cup, I think that would have made a huge difference to how he's perceived. Not just amongst Fulham fans, but also in the wider footballing context in general.
Okay, brilliant. That's Bobby Zamora coming in second place. And finally, Matt, who's your pick as the best Fulham striker of all time?
Again, someone that should be well known to most people. I've gone for Louis Saha, and I think it's just the way that he played and the manner in which he did. Because you could make the argument that he was the complete centre forward, the complete striker. He could score equally well with either foot. He could score with his head, and I think if you go back to the dominant Division 1 back in those days, old money, Division 1 campaign. Again, just the trio of him, Hales, and Lewis Beaumonte was a trio that I arguably don't think will ever be beaten in this division. Even the Hounslow Town BMW team of a couple of seasons ago, nothing compared to what that three, spearheaded by Saha, were able to do in that promotion campaign. And then when you look at what he did in the Premier League as well, you talked earlier about the step up. He very much was able to step up when it came to making the move from the Championship to the Premier League. And it was no surprise then really when within 2.5 seasons he was on his way to Manchester United, because of that. He deserved to be at that level. He was far too good for a club like Fulham, and it was only going to be a matter of time before someone snapped him up. So I just think when you look at what he was able to do, and again, some of it is the importance of it, getting us out of the Division 1 for the first time and into the Premier League, off the back of his goals, and being able to stay in the Premier League and even push further up the table beyond that in 02-03 and the first part of 03-04 before he moved to Manchester United. I think his impact and what he was able to do for the club in getting us up and stabilising us, I think is something that just cannot be understated and cannot be ignored. So that's why I think, in the grand scheme of things, when you took into account his talent and his history and his impact, I think that's why he has to go at number one.
Do you think he sort of deserves even more credit than he perhaps gets? If you look at his career as a whole, I mean, he got 20 caps for France. When you look at the attacking players France had, particularly sort of his peak, I know nice Thierry Henry around. Obviously, he's not going to get as many caps as he perhaps should have. And then at Manchester United, you've got the likes of Wayne Rooney around, Carlos Tevez later, or Cristiano Ronaldo, players like that. He was competing with some of the best players we've seen in the Premier League at times, either at international stage or at Manchester United. Do you think, in one way, that's testament to the ability he had, that he was considered as a player as one of their contemporaries? But do you think maybe he was almost a bit unlucky just to be around at that time?
Yeah, I think it was a case of wrong place, wrong time. Again, I think he did deserve to. As I say, he was bigger than Fulham. He was better than what we were, at that time. So I think no one could really have begrudged him making the move that he did. It's just a case that it did happen to Manchester United, who he could very well have gone on to be a main figure for them. Because it wasn't too long after Van Nistelrooy, after that, the Van Nistelrooy left. But it was, again, 6 months later, Wayne Rooney came onto the scene, and that pretty much ended, anything for him. And you managed to see that when he moved to, Everton, he was able to play fantastically there. So I think he deserved to be in that, top 6, top 7. He deserved to be in a club in that echelon, in that part of the table. It's just a case that Manchester United were probably the wrong club for him. But I'm sure if anyone else had come around for him, I'll take, for instance, Liverpool for it. I reckon because it would that summer after he moved to Man United was when Michael Owen left Liverpool. I think he could easily have gone on to fill that spot. In Liverpool. So I think he certainly did deserve to be on that. It's just a case of, as you say, circumstances meant that he wasn't able to flourish in the way that he should have, and the way that his talents, as he showed at Fulham, were able to demonstrate.
Yeah, certainly a good shout though for number one striker Fulham have ever had. A top player, one that could perform at the top level as well, and obviously had a glittering career, plenty of top clubs, and obviously France international caps on his CV as well. Matt, thanks for joining us this afternoon. Just before you go, where can we catch your Fulham musings? Where's the best way to find you?
So we are at so the podcast I'm on is at Fulham_focus. We're also on Twitter. We're on Twitter, obviously. That's the first one. We're also on Instagram, and we've got the website, which is at www.fulhamfocus.com, where we do blogs, podcasts, interviews, player Q&As, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So that's the best way to find us.
Okay, awesome. Check that out, Fulham fans. Coming up on Football League World TV later on today at 4:30, I'll be back with the EFL London show. We'll be discussing Fulham, among other things. Billy Mully and Marcus Ellie will be joining me for that one. And then at 5:30, we've got a Hull City fan debate show, similar to this, 5 best Hull City strikers of all time. Ben Wignall is hosting that one. He'll be joined by Matt Lill. But Matt, thanks again for joining me this afternoon. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. I certainly have, and we will catch you very soon.